My husband's family invited me to a family meeting where they handed me a contract saying, "Sign this to transfer your savings to us." I laughed until they locked the doors. His mother smirked. "It's for the family's future. You wouldn't betray us, right?" My husband stayed silent. Then I pulled out my phone and said, "I'll call the police." Suddenly, his father panicked. Turns out, they had a hidden secret they desperately wanted to keep buried. I should have known something was off when Derek suggested we spend the weekend at his parents' house. We weren't the kind of couple who spent much time with his family. Actually, we weren't the kind of couple who spent much time together at all anymore. Derek and I had been married for almost 10 years, but somewhere along the way, we became two people living separate lives under the same roof. I focused on my career, my financial stability, my future. He focused on, well, I wasn't always sure. Business ideas that never panned out, hobbies that fizzled out as quickly as they started, a job he never seemed to enjoy but also never tried to leave. So when he told me, completely out of the blue, that his mom wanted us to visit, I felt a prickle of suspicion. Victoria had never liked me. To her, I was the woman who took her son away, the outsider. The few times we saw her and Richard, I always felt like I was being observed, judged. Their questions about my work were always laced with something unspoken, like they thought my financial success was some sort of personal insult to their family's way of life. But Derek insisted. "They just want to have a nice weekend," he said. "It's been a while." Maybe it was guilt that made me say yes. Or maybe it was just exhaustion. I was tired of the distance, tired of feeling like my marriage was held together by obligation instead of love. Maybe I thought this trip would help somehow. It didn't. The moment we arrived at his parents' house, I knew something was wrong. Victoria greeted us at the door with an almost too bright smile. "There you are," she said, pulling Derek into a tight hug. "We were starting to think you'd changed your minds." Derek gave her a stiff smile, but he didn't say anything. I noticed how his shoulders tensed, how he avoided my gaze. Richard stood behind her, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Long drive." "Not too bad," I said. I expected the usual cold nod. Instead, he gave me a look, something between forced politeness and calculation. "Come inside," Victoria said, stepping back. "Everyone's waiting." Everyone. Derek hadn't mentioned his siblings would be here. But as soon as we walked into the dining room, there they were. Callum, Derek's older brother, leaned against the fireplace, his arms crossed over his chest, watching us like he was sizing me up. His little sister, Bianca, sat at the dining table, absently tapping her nails against the wood. She gave me a thin smile. "Glad you could make it," she said. I hesitated. "What's going on?" Victoria gestured to the chair at the end of the table. "Have a seat, dear." I didn't move. Derek finally spoke. "Just sit down." His voice was tight, almost pleading. My stomach twisted. I sat. Richard reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. He slid it across the table toward me. "Read it." I frowned, opening it. A stack of papers stared back at me. The first line hit me like a punch to the gut. "Financial reallocation for the benefit of the family." I flipped through the pages, my hands growing clammy as I skimmed the terms. My savings. My investments. They wanted it all. I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "You're joking." Nobody laughed with me. Victoria folded her hands. "It's not a joke." I glanced at Derek, waiting for him to tell me this was some kind of terrible misunderstanding. He looked down. That's when I felt the first real sting of betrayal. I put the papers down, pushing them away like they were something rotten. "You actually expect me to sign this?" "It's for the family," Bianca said, her tone soft, almost reasonable. "You're part of this family, right?" I stared at her. "Excuse me." Richard cleared his throat. "We all have to make sacrifices. This is about securing a stable future." "For who?" I snapped. "Because I worked my SS off for this money. I built my savings. Not you. Not any of you." Callum let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "Christ, she's worse than I thought." Victoria sighed. "You've always had an independent streak. That's why we're doing this together. As a family." "This isn't family. This is extortion." Richard's eyes darkened. "Watch your tone." I stood. "No, you watch yours. Because there is no way in HLL I'm signing that." Derek grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but enough to make my heart pound. "Just listen." I wrenched my arm away. "How dare you?" He looked pained. "It's not what you think." "Oh, so it's not you trying to steal my money." His silence told me everything. I turned to leave. That's when I heard the lock click. I whipped around. Callum stood by the door, casually sliding the key into his pocket. Cold fear wrapped around my spine. "What the HLL do you think you're doing?" I demanded. Victoria's smile returned. "We just need you to understand." I pulled my phone out. "I'll call the police." That's when Richard panicked. He jumped up so fast his chair screeched against the floor. "Wait." I froze. Because for the first time, I saw it. The fear in his eyes. Not of me. Not even of what I might say. But of who I might call. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my money. They were desperate. Because whatever they were hiding wasn't just a bad financial decision. It was something worse. Something that could destroy them. And I had just found their biggest weakness. My hand tightened around my phone. The entire room had shifted, no longer just a disgusting money grab, but something bigger, something dangerous. Richard's panicked reaction wasn't just about me refusing to sign. He was scared, not of losing my money, but of what would happen if I made that call. I took a slow, measured breath, my pulse hammering. You don't want me to call the cops, I said. Why? Nobody spoke. Derek's hands twitched at his sides, like he wanted to reach for me, but thought better of it. Callum's jaw tightened. Bianca wouldn't meet my eyes. Victoria. She just smiled. That same eerie, practiced, controlled smile. Richard wiped his forehead. Let's not be rash. You weren't worried about being rash when you locked the damn door? I shot back. Victoria sighed like I was being dramatic. There's no need for the police. Then opened the door. Callum didn't move. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I felt like I was standing on a frozen lake, the ice beneath me cracking with every breath. What the HLL are you all hiding? I asked. Richard let out a sharp breath, looking at Victoria. She tilted her head, still eerily composed. We're not hiding anything. I narrowed my eyes. Bullcrap. Victoria's eyes flicked toward Derek. Tell her. He stiffened. My stomach lurched. Tell me what? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. His fingers rubbed at his temple like he was trying to find the right words, but there weren't any. Because there wasn't a right way to explain whatever the HLL this was. Finally, he spoke. Dad. Made some mistakes. Mistakes. I repeated, my voice flat. Derek nodded slowly. Big ones. Richard clenched his jaw. It's under control. It clearly isn't, I snapped. Otherwise, you wouldn't be pulling this little stunt. No one denied it. I shifted my attention back to Derek. What kind of mistakes? He swallowed. I turned to Richard. What the HLL did you do? He rubbed a hand down his face, exhaling sharply. His usual cold, commanding demeanor cracked for the first time. He looked tired, desperate. Then Callum answered for him. Dad stole money. My blood ran cold. I stared at Richard. You what? His jaw clenched. Not stole, Victoria corrected smoothly. He borrowed it. Callum scoffed. Borrowed from who, Mom? The goddamn government. My heart pounded. What the HLL does that mean? Derek finally met my gaze. It means, he said slowly, if we don't fix this, my dad's going to prison. Everything clicked into place like a sick, twisted puzzle. They didn't just want my money to help the family. They wanted it to cover up a crime. I exhaled sharply, trying to process it. How much? Nobody answered. I turned to Richard. How much? His hands curled into fists. 5 million. I nearly choked. $5 million? He looked away. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. And what? You thought you'd just steal mine instead? Victoria's expression remained calm, but I saw something cold flicker beneath her mask. This is a solution that benefits everyone, she said. I let out another laugh. This one colder, sharper. Everyone? You mean you? Because last I checked, I don't have $5 million lying around. Bianca spoke up for the first time. You have enough. I turned to her. Enough? You think I have anywhere near that kind of money? Victoria let out a small, amused hum. Don't insult us, dear. We know exactly how much you have. My stomach twisted. You've been keeping tabs on my finances? Of course, she said smoothly. We needed to be sure you'd be capable of helping. My skin crawled. I turned to Derek. Did you know? He hesitated. That was my answer. My breath caught in my throat. You son of a BTCH. Derek reached for me. I didn't want. I shoved his hand away. You knew. You knew they were watching my money. You knew they were planning this. He squeezed his eyes shut. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Victoria sighed. This isn't personal. I snapped my head toward her. You're trying to rob me and telling me it's not personal? She smiled. If it were personal, we wouldn't be asking. I scoffed. Asking. You locked me in a room. Richard exhaled sharply. This is getting us nowhere. No, I said. It's not. Because you think I'm actually going to give you a single goddamn cent. You will, Callum muttered. I shot him a look. Excuse me. His lips twitched into something almost smug. You will. I squared my shoulders. And why would I? Victoria's expression softened. Practiced, calculated, manipulative. Because, dear, she said, if you don't, we won't be the only ones going down for this. A cold chill ran through me. My mouth went dry. What the HLL does that mean? Derek went still. Mom, he muttered. Victoria ignored him. Her gaze locked onto mine like a predator closing in. It means, sweetheart, that you've been married to my son for 10 years. And whether you realize it or not, some of that money of yours is tied to him. And since he's been connected to some of your investments, well, she tilted her head. Legally speaking, that makes you involved too. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I turned to Derek, my heart pounding. Tell me she's lying. His silence was deafening. You absolute bastard, I whispered. Victoria leaned forward slightly. So you see, darling, you don't really have much of a choice. My hands shook, but I clenched them into fists, refusing to let them see it. I wasn't trapped. I refused to be. Slowly, I lifted my phone, my finger hovering over the screen. Let me make this very clear, I said, voice low and sharp. I will not give you a single cent. And if you try to come after me, if you so much as breathe in my direction after I leave this house, I will make that call. Victoria's smile faltered. I saw it. The first crack. Richard's jaw tightened. Bianca glanced at Callum, uncertainty flickering across her face. Derek looked like a man caught between a firing squad and a cliff. I inhaled, forcing calm into my voice. Now open the goddamn door. Callum's smirk vanished. Victoria studied me. And then, slowly, she exhaled. Fine, she said. She nodded at Callum. He pulled the key from his pocket. And the door unlocked. But I wasn't SDPID. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I kept my eyes on Callum as he turned the key, the sound of the lock clicking open echoing through the tense silence. I didn't move right away. My instincts screamed at me to be careful. Just because they'd unlocked the door didn't mean I was safe. Victoria still looked composed, but something behind her eyes told me this wasn't the end of it. This wasn't surrender. It was calculation. She was weighing something. Richard stayed silent, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Bianca had gone rigid, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Callum. He was still smirking, but there was an edge to it now, something tight. And Derek. I couldn't even look at him. Not without feeling the hot sting of betrayal all over again. I took a slow breath. I'm leaving. Victoria gave me a pleasant smile. Of course, dear. I didn't trust her for a second. I stepped toward the door, keeping my phone gripped tightly in my hand. Callum didn't move out of the way at first. He just stood there, blocking my path, watching me like I was some kind of game he was playing. Then, after a long pause, he stepped aside. I didn't thank him. Didn't say another word. I walked out. But I knew this wasn't over. I didn't run, though every instinct told me to. I kept my steps even, my back straight, my breathing steady. I walked out of that house like I owned the ground I was stepping on. I reached the car, but I didn't get in. Not yet. I had one more thing to do. Slowly, I turned back to face the house. The front door was still open, and Victoria stood just inside the doorway, watching me. Smiling. I held up my phone and pressed a single button. The screen lit up. I saw the flicker of movement from inside. Derek shifting on his feet. Bianca whispering something to Callum. Richard rubbing his temples like this was giving him a headache. Victoria didn't flinch. She just watched. I raised the phone slightly higher, just enough to make a point. Then I got into my car and drove away. I don't remember the entire drive home. It passed in a blur, my mind racing through every second of what had just happened. The nerve of them. The audacity. The betrayal. Derek. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I should have known. I should have seen it coming. But I'd spent years convincing myself that, despite everything, despite the growing distance and the way he always let his family walk all over me, Derek wasn't a bad person. But this was unforgivable. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I was shaking with adrenaline. I locked the car doors behind me, rushed into the house, and immediately pulled out my laptop. They thought they knew everything about my finances. They thought they owned me. I'd show them just how wrong they were. I moved quickly, transferring funds, double-checking accounts, making sure nothing was vulnerable. I changed passwords, withdrew a significant chunk of my money into an account they couldn't track. I wasn't going to wait for them to make the next move. I was going to destroy them first. The first sign of trouble came 2 days later. It was Derek. I hadn't spoken to him since I walked out of that house. He hadn't called, hadn't texted, and I had no plans to reach out first. But now he was standing on the front porch, knocking like we were still husband and wife instead of two people on opposite sides of a battlefield. I stared at him through the peephole. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. I hesitated. Not because I forgave him, because I didn't. Not because I wanted to hear whatever pathetic excuse he was about to offer, because I didn't. But because I wanted to see how desperate he'd become. I opened the door. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then, finally, he spoke. They're not going to let this go. I crossed my arms. Neither am I. A flicker of pain crossed his face. He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. You don't understand. Enlighten me. He swallowed. You think this is about money. It isn't. I narrowed my eyes. Then what is it about, Derek? Because from where I'm standing, your family just tried to extort me, and you stood there and let them. He winced. I didn't want, don't you dare say you didn't want this. My voice was cold, sharp enough to cut. Because if you didn't want this, you would have warned me. You would have stopped them. Instead, you sat there like a goddamn coward. His jaw clenched. I shook my head. You don't get to play the victim. You chose this, Derek. His shoulders slumped. He looked away, staring at the ground like a scolded child. Then, softly, he said, you don't understand what my mother is capable of. A chill ran through me. Something in his voice, something hollow, defeated, sent a prickle of unease down my spine. I took a slow breath. Then make me understand. His eyes flicked to mine. He looked scared. And that scared me. Because Derek had never been scared of Victoria before. He'd idolized her, defended her, let her dictate his life without question. But now he looked like a man who had seen something he couldn't unsee. I swallowed. Derek, what did she do? He hesitated. Then, in a voice so low I almost didn't hear it, he said, she had someone KLLD. The world tilted. I felt the ground shift beneath me, my breath catching in my throat. What? I whispered. Derek rubbed his face, exhaling sharply. His hands were shaking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I gripped the doorframe, my mind racing. He cut himself off, shaking his head like he couldn't believe he was saying it out loud. It was years ago. A business deal gone wrong. I only found out last week. My stomach turned. Victoria, the woman who had sat across from me, smiling like a queen on her throne. The woman who had tried to force me to sign over my money. The woman who now, apparently, had blood on her hands. I couldn't breathe. I whispered, why are you telling me this now? Derek swallowed. His voice was hoarse. Because she thinks you're a problem. The air turned ice cold. I stared at him. What does that mean? He hesitated. Then, finally, he looked me in the eye. It means, he said, voice barely above a whisper, that if you don't give her what she wants, she's going to make you disappear. My blood ran cold. Derek's words echoed in my head, twisting into something sharp, something suffocating. She's going to make you disappear. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that he was exaggerating, lying, joking, but he wasn't. His hands trembled at his sides, his jaw tight with something that almost looked like regret. Or maybe it was fear. I took a slow step back, my grip tightening on the doorframe. You're serious? Derek swallowed hard. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. For the first time in a long time, I believed him. And I hated that. Because if he was scared of Victoria, Derek, the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong in his mother's eyes, then I was in more danger than I had realized. I forced my voice to stay even. Tell me everything. Derek hesitated. Now I snapped. He exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair. I only found out about the situation last week. Dad was panicking, Mom was handling it. I didn't think much of it at first, just figured it was another business deal going south. But then I overheard her talking to someone. I don't know who, but she said something that didn't sit right with me. What did she say? Derek looked me dead in the eye. Take care of it. A shiver crawled down my spine. You think she meant? I trailed off, my stomach twisting. I know she did, Derek said grimly. Because the next day, that business problem disappeared. No news, no police reports. Just gone. I inhaled sharply. Jesus Christ. I confronted her, Derek said, his voice hoarse. She didn't even deny it. Just told me to stay in my lane. Reminded me that family always comes first. He let out a bitter laugh. That's when I realized how deep this goes. How much she's kept from us. I don't even know if Dad knows the full extent of it. But one thing's for sure, she doesn't tolerate threats. I stiffened. And you think I'm a threat? He nodded slowly. You walked out of that house, and you made it very clear you weren't going to play along. You think my mother's just going to let that go? My heart pounded. She thinks you're a liability now. And when people become liabilities, she makes them disappear. I wanted to call him paranoid. I wanted to believe he was just being dramatic, that Victoria was controlling but not dangerous. But the way he was looking at me, the urgency in his voice, I couldn't ignore it. I forced myself to stay calm. What do you expect me to do? Derek hesitated. Let me fix this. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You? I know my mother, he insisted. I know how she operates. If I can convince her that you're not a threat, that you're willing to negotiate. Negotiate what? Giving her my money? Because that's never going to happen. Derek sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. I'm trying to keep you alive. I'll handle it myself, I snapped. His eyes darkened. How? You think you can go to the police? You have no proof. No recordings, no paper trail, nothing. It's your word against hers. And if you try to expose her, she'll find out before you even get a chance. I swallowed hard. Because I knew he was right. Victoria was careful. Meticulous. She didn't make mistakes. She didn't leave evidence. That's why she'd gotten away with everything for so long. I clenched my jaw. Then I'll disappear first. Derek blinked. What? I'll take my money, pack my things, and leave. She'll find you, he said, his voice low. She always does. The absolute certainty in his voice sent a fresh wave of fear through me. Then what do you suggest? I hissed. He hesitated. Let me talk to her. I let out another bitter laugh. Oh yeah? That's worked out great for me so far. I mean it this time, Derek said, his voice tight. I'll make her back off. I shook my head. And why the HLL would you help me now? Derek flinched. He looked away, his jaw clenching. I owe you that much, he muttered. I studied him, searching for deception. He looked tired, defeated, maybe even ashamed. And for the first time since this all started, I saw it. A crack in his loyalty to Victoria. Maybe he'd finally seen what she really was. I exhaled, shaking my head. I don't trust you. He nodded. I don't blame you. We stood there in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on us. Then, finally, he said, "Be careful." I didn't respond. I just shut the door in his face. I didn't sleep that night. Every noise outside made my skin crawl. Every shadow made me flinch. Victoria wasn't the type to make empty threats. And if Derek was right, if she really saw me as a problem, then I needed to act fast. I moved with purpose, burned through my emergency contacts, called in favors, emptied accounts. I made sure every single cent I had was safe and untraceable. I wasn't just going to hide. I was going to fight. Because Victoria had made one crucial mistake. She underestimated me, and I was going to make sure she regretted it. I didn't run. I refused to. Victoria thought she could back me into a corner, strip me of my power, and force me to submit. She thought she had all the leverage, that I'd roll over like everyone else in her life had. She was wrong. I spent the next week moving in silence. Every cent of my money was secured. Accounts moved to places even she couldn't touch. I spoke to lawyers, quietly, carefully, made sure every loose end was tied. I changed passwords, locked down my credit, and put everything in my name alone. Derek, for all his faults, didn't show up again. Maybe he was trying to fix things in his own way, or maybe he knew there was nothing he could do. Either way, I didn't care. I had a plan, and I was going to win. Victoria made her move first. I was at work when the email came through. Subject: urgent legal matter. Response required. I opened it and nearly laughed. She'd gone through her lawyers, trying to claim that Derek and I, as a married couple, had mutual financial obligations. That my money, by extension, was his money, that I owed the family for my time with them. It was pathetic, transparent, and completely baseless. I took my time before responding. I forwarded it to my lawyer, attached copies of every document proving my assets were mine alone, and added a single line to the email. This is an unfortunate misuse of legal resources. Any further attempts to access my finances will be considered harassment. Then I hit send and waited. The second ATTCK came a few days later. I was in the middle of packing up the last of Derek's things, everything he hadn't bothered to take when he moved out, when I got a call from my bank. "There's been an attempt to access one of your accounts," the woman on the line said. It was flagged as suspicious. I sat down, gripping the edge of the couch. "Who was it?" There was a pause. "The request came from a joint account you previously had with your husband, but the authorization attempt failed. It seems someone tried to use old credentials." Victoria. She was getting desperate. I forced a smile into my voice. "Thank you for catching that. Please make sure my accounts remain restricted to me only." "Of course, ma'am." I ended the call and exhaled. She wasn't going to stop. She was going to keep pushing until I had nothing left. That's when I realized I needed to end this. Once and for all. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Bianca called me that night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I put her on speaker and leaned back, arms crossed. "What do you want?" A heavy sigh. "Look, I don't agree with what my parents are doing." I raised an eyebrow. "That's new." She huffed. "I mean it. They're spiraling. You humiliated them, and they don't know how to handle it." "I humiliated them." I scoffed. "They tried to steal from me. They locked me in a room." Bianca was quiet for a moment. "I know. And I think it's about to get worse." My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "They're planning something," she admitted. "I don't know what, but Mom has been making calls all day. She keeps saying you need to be taught a lesson." I forced my voice to stay calm. "Why are you telling me this?" Another sigh. "Because I don't want to be part of it anymore." For the first time, there was genuine hesitation in her voice. Victoria's iron grip on her family was slipping. I saw my opening. "Bianca," I said carefully, "do you want to get out?" Silence. Then, softly, "Yes." That's when I knew. I was going to turn Victoria's own daughter against her. Bianca met me the next morning. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "I don't know why I'm here," she muttered, crossing her arms. "Because you're tired of living in your mother's shadow," I said simply. She scoffed, but didn't argue. I leaned forward. "Tell me what she's planning." Bianca hesitated. Then, finally, she whispered, "She's trying to get you fired." My hands curled into fists. "Excuse me?" "She's been calling your company, spreading rumors, saying you embezzled money, that you're being investigated. She wants them to cut ties before the scandal gets worse." I exhaled slowly, keeping my anger in check. Victoria was playing dirty. Good. So could I? I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen a few times, scrolling through my files. Then I slid it across the table to Bianca. She frowned. "What's this?" "Proof." She picked up the phone and scanned the documents. Bank transfers, tax records, business dealings, things I had gathered over the past week. Things that painted a very clear picture of Richard's illegal activities. Bianca's face paled. "This is real?" she whispered. "Very." She swallowed hard. "If this got out." I met her eyes. "They'd lose everything." She set the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. I leaned back. "I don't want to destroy your family, Bianca. I just want them to leave me alone." She exhaled. "What do you want me to do?" It only took one call. Bianca confronted Victoria. I wasn't there, but I could imagine how it went. She told her mother exactly what I had. That I had evidence. That if Victoria kept pushing, I would push back harder. That if she ever so much as mentioned my name again, everything she had built, the wealth, the reputation, the power, would come crashing down. And just like that, it was over. Victoria stopped. No more legal threats. No more banking issues. No more whispers about my job. She didn't apologize, because of course she didn't. But she did back off. Completely. And Derek? He filed for divorce a few weeks later. He didn't ask for anything. Didn't fight me on assets or try to drag it out. I think he knew better. He left with nothing. Just like his mother. And me? I walked away with everything I had worked for. My money. My career. My peace. And for the first time in a long time, I won.